these things can come through and be more sustainable or supported through research. So we would be focusing this session on mapping on research that has happened around Africa, but largely mapping study around what research is happening in Africa, especially led by Africans. And then definitely how we're leveraging collaboration, coordination, and partnerships for research in Africa. So I want to use this opportunity to invite our presenters. So the way we would have the session is we would have our presenters share their findings, and then we would open up for discussions mostly. So we're really hoping that you would drive the conversation today. All right, so I'll start with inviting Dr. Tieno Diallo, who is the research manager with Education Sub-Saharan Africa, to join me on stage. And secondly, Professor Helen Iyega from the University of Nairobi. She's a foundational learning expert and supporting work across World Bank, ADEA, and a number of establishments. So she's an expert in this field. All right, please come on stage. So we'll start with Dr. Tieno's presentation.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for giving me the floor. It's a great pleasure to be here today to share with you some findings of our mapping of foundational learning research in Sub-Saharan Africa. So this study is part of our foundational learning project funded by Gates Foundation with the main purpose of improving the visibility of foundational learning studies conducted in Sub-Saharan Africa by Sub-Saharan Africa-based researchers. And we did it in collaboration with Real Center at the University of Cambridge. And we focus mainly on 4 countries: Ghana, Kenya, Tanzania, and Senegal, where I'm from. So the first question that may come to mind is why we are striving to improve the visibility of foundational learning research in these 4 countries. We are doing this for 2 main reasons. The first one is to raise the profile of foundational learning researchers in these 4 countries. And the second one is to connect local researchers with policymakers to better improve learning outcomes of primary school-age children. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So now to go into more details, first I will talk about the background of our study, then the methodology, the findings, and finally what we are excited to do next. Next one, please. We all know that there is a serious learning crisis in Sub-Saharan Africa, but let me just remind you a bit about that. We noticed since the COVID-19 pandemic that foundational learning researchers has gained a significant interest because of the learning crisis, especially in Sub-Saharan Africa, where only 1 in 5 children achieve minimum proficiency levels in reading and mathematics. This means that 80% of children lack the basic literacy and numeracy skills according to UNESCO, which is alarming. This is also true in our 4 focus countries. For example, in Tanzania, a grade 2 learner can read correctly only 27 words per minute, which is below the benchmark of 45 words per minute. In Kenya, over half of grade 4 learners cannot read correctly a grade 3 English text. And according to the World Bank, in Senegal, 74% of children cannot read and understand a simple text by age 10. So these situations are alarming. And we do believe that policymakers can or should build on evidence generated by local researchers to implement policies that can improve the learning outcomes in primary education. Because when a problem is local, locals are better placed to address it. Next slide, please. Despite the importance of local research, what we notice is very little is known about the state of foundational learning research conducted in Africa by Africa-based researchers. And the third point we notice is Africa-based researchers strive to produce high-quality educational research, but most of this research is often overlooked. And this is in part because African researchers mostly publish in local journals, and also an important part of their research is classified as gray literature, which is not always available online. So in this context, we believe that mapping foundational learning studies can not only raise the profile of Africa-based researchers, but also inform education policies aimed at improving learning outcomes of primary school age children. Next slide, please. So how did we do the mapping? We did it using a number of criteria. In terms of research outputs, we used PhD theses, journal articles, reports, and books. And these research outputs are taken from local and regional journals, websites of universities and organizations implementing foundational learning programs. And we also engage directly with some researchers to make sure we include studies not available online. In terms of authorship, for each country, I mean Ghana, Kenya, Tanzania, and Senegal, we only included studies conducted at least by one local researcher during the period between 2010 and 2023, and focusing on literacy or numeracy skills of primary school age children. Next slide, please. So let me share with you the main findings of our mapping exercise, starting with this graph that highlights the number of foundational learning studies conducted by researchers based in our focus countries. As you can see, Senegal has the lowest number with 115 foundational learning studies identified during the period. And Kenya records the highest with 298 foundational learning studies. One thing we can notice in this first graph is Senegal, the only Francophone country among the four, is behind the Anglophone countries in terms of knowledge, production. So does it mean English speakers are more productive than French speakers? Is it really a matter of language divide? So it's something we Francophone need to reflect on. And also we noticed that out of the 115 foundational learning studies we have identified for Senegal, 1/3 is in English and 2 in French. This means that even if we take into account the language of publication, Senegal is always behind. And in the second graph, we can see that journal articles dominate the research outputs in all 4 countries, with Ghana and Kenya having the highest percentages. Next one, please. Here we can see from this graph a growing number of foundational learning studies in the 4 countries during the period, even if we note different trends across the countries. For example, in Senegal, the peak, the highest number of studies identified was observed in 2017 with 16 studies. In Ghana, the peak was observed in 2018 with 16 or so studies identified. In Kenya, the peak was observed in 2020 with 36 studies identified, but we actually don't know what drive these peaks. Next one, please. The first graph here highlights the extent to which foundational learning studies are funded in Senegal, Ghana, Kenya, and also Tanzania. And we can see from the first graph that in all 4 countries, over half of the studies did not mention their funding sources. That being said, I am very glad to report here that Senegal is doing better in terms of funding foundational learning research. However, only 1/3 of these studies are funded in Senegal, which means there is still a lot to be done. But the context or in Ghana, it is more alarming, where only 8% of foundational learning studies being funded, and in Kenya, it's only around 10%. We also analyzed the level of funding by types of research outputs. And as you can see in the second graph, unlike other countries, in Senegal, most of the research funding is allocated to reports. We can also see in this second graph that PhD thesis remains the least funded research outputs, regardless of the country, which is a trend we need to reverse, definitely. Next one, please. So in this table, we analyzed the funding sources. And as we can see, in all our 4 countries, most of the funding for foundational learning research is provided by international partners. The level of public funding for foundational learning research is very low across the countries, especially in Senegal, where public funding for foundational learning research is only 4%. So this indicates that our states are not fully involved in supporting foundational learning research. So the question is it a matter of limited resources or competing priorities? So we definitely need to find out. Next one, please. So in this table, we analyzed the main thematic areas investigated in the foundational literacy field. And as we can see, in all 4 countries, literacy turns out to be the most investigated thematic area. And what we can also see in this table is literacy received almost twice as much attention as numeracy in all 4 countries, which is a gap we need to fill, definitely. Another gap we also need to fill, as highlighted in this table, is a lack of research about ICT. Very few FL research investigated the extent to which ICT use can improve literacy or numeracy skills of primary school age children. Next one, please. We also investigated the extent to which FL research conducted in our 4 focus countries take into account inequality factors. And the figures indicate that few studies took into account issues such as poverty, ethnicity, gender, and also disability. While we all know that these factors can significantly affect learning outcomes. And for example, in Kenya, Senegal, and Ghana, studies that considered inequality factors focus mainly on gender issues. Next one, please. So in our mapping, we also investigated the level and types of collaboration in our 4 focus countries. And we can see here that from the first graph, in all 4 countries, the overwhelming majority of FLN studies have been conducted in forms of collaboration. However, the second graph indicates that most of the collaborations are within country and outside sub-Saharan Africa. We notice a very limited collaboration among researchers in sub-Saharan Africa. And the question is, why are we not collaborating in Africa? What is wrong? Next one, please. Talking about gender, in this graph, we analyze the gender distribution of foundational learning researchers to see the extent to which female researchers contribute to the field. And the figures reveal that except in Kenya, the foundational learning research field is largely dominated by male researchers, especially in Senegal, where men contribute 3 times more than women, which is also a gap we need to fill. Next slide, please. So as part of our project, we also try to understand research priorities and capacity building needs of foundational learning researchers based in sub-Saharan Africa more broadly. And for that, we use 3 data sources, an online survey, which we conducted between 2022 and 2023, an online workshop, which we organized last year with small group discussions, and also in-person and online interviews with foundational learning researchers. And the surveys indicate 2 main areas: those with extensive research and those with gaps in the literature. For example, while many studies have been conducted on topics such as the use of mother tongue in education, the foundational learning researchers we spoke to, especially in Senegal, believe that more research should be done again on the introduction of local languages in the education system, and also its implication on the learning outcomes of primary school age children. On the other hand, researchers indicate some gaps that need to be filled, such as the lack of research on non-formal education, and also the lack of research taking into account children with special needs, as highlighted earlier. Next one, please. Next one. Okay. So okay. No, go back, please. Yes. Next one. Let's move on, please. Move on. It's okay. So our surveys revealed that foundational learning researchers based in sub-Saharan Africa face many challenges, and these include heavy workload and also few collaborations or partnerships. Next one, please. Okay, no, go back. Okay, thank you. Move on. Move on, please. Again. Okay, it's good. Thank you. The lack of funding is also among the challenges that face foundational learning researchers based in sub-Saharan Africa. And the surveys indicate that African researchers often lacked the grant writing skills and also experience to access international funding, resulting in fewer authorship opportunities and also fewer collaborations with researchers outside their countries. Next one, please. The surveys also revealed that researchers are not always adequately trained in foundational learning research methods and assessment, and also software due to the high cost of these kinds of training. There are also inadequate resources available to academics to facilitate and support their research project. Next one, please. During the survey, foundational learning researchers proposed some solutions to address these challenges, and these included providing more time for research to be able to conduct high quality research, connecting also researchers with policymakers to bring research and policy in alignment, and also introducing long-term mentoring programs. Next one, please. And based on the findings of our mapping and the survey data, what we are excited to do next is to support researchers in our focus countries to address the challenges they face and to fill the gap in the field. So since one of the biggest challenges we notice is a lack of funding, we will be supporting foundational learning researchers to conduct research in the areas where there are still research gaps. We will also connect them with policymakers to make sure their research is policy oriented. And we are really pleased that Gates Foundation is supporting us again to achieve these goals. Next one, please. So for more information about our mapping, you can visit our website, and the report is available both in English and French. Thank you very much.
So please let's welcome Professor Helen to make her presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm really happy to be here today to be able to share my research. And I would like to state that this research was basically to map foundational learning stakeholders in 15 countries, and it was commissioned by ADEA. Again, all of us now are familiar with the work ADEA is doing in regards to foundational learning, and they wanted to have deeper insights within the various member countries, and 15 in particular, to be able to determine who are the stakeholders. And so this presentation is a subset really of the big 15-country research. And this one focuses specifically on partnerships, coordination, and the place of funding in regards to foundational research. So if you could go to the next slide, please. Just go to the next one. So their introduction, really, mine is just to reiterate the fact that foundational learning focuses on not only literacy, but literacy and the essential cognitive and social-emotional skills, which really, by our being here, reiterates that it's really at the core and heart of global and regional education strategies. It's critical for the overall education development and future of our children in terms of their success in Africa. AU has endorsed it. And again, as demonstrated earlier today, efforts by different governments, most of whom are represented here in this forum, are currently underway. And there are many partners. It seems to me like there's a lot of renewed interest across Africa. But the question still remains in regards to learning poverty. Why are we still having low learning outcomes in spite of the efforts that have been put in? So I'm really sharing reflections based on a document that I prepared for ADEA, the 15-country foundational learning stakeholder mapping. And these were the countries that I focused on, including Angola and all the way to Zimbabwe. And I was very excited. In the heart of that discussion, we had the president of Zambia actually being fronted as the champion of foundational learning in Africa. And this has been evidenced by also the minister present today. You saw how excited he was in regards to championing. The countries that have put a star are the ones who have been leading the way. When you think about the engagements, Rwanda, Senegal, even though the presenter before me said that there doesn't seem to be a lot of research, they have been on the forefront. And Kenya actually just tagging in from behind. And one of the issues that he probably raised is in regards to the language. So sometimes it's more like the language that is available for us who are undertaking research in these various contexts that could be the challenge more than really the research itself being visible. Okay, go on to the next slide. So in terms of the research methodology, we had a participatory mixed methods approach. It was multi-stage. So we had phase one, where we did desk reviews, key informant interviews, and online surveys with several outputs as outlined. And then we narrowed down to 5 countries to be able to map out much more closely who is who in the country, so that if ADEA is interested in having an in-country activity around foundational learning, who should be brought onto the table. Next slide, please. So our theory of change was that if all the stakeholders are identified, they are mapped, and of course, the foundational learning best practices are harnessed and documented, then of course, there's likely to be evidence on what works and what does not. I know we know about what works, but really being able to weed out what does not. And then of course, we'll be able to have more focused dialogues. This afternoon, the ministers are in a closed door meeting. So that is the kind of information they need to have within the 1 hour or so they're meeting. What information do we need to really share with them? So we would have evidence, and then of course, use that evidence for decision-making or policy change and programming, as well as further research, as has been attested by the former presenter. Next slide, please. So the thematic areas that we focused on in this research, we were keen to find out what data and evidence is available in the 15 countries. What is happening around early childhood development? What is happening regarding policy? Are there any legal frameworks that are actually supporting foundational learning? How about equity and inclusion? What measures are being taken to do that? And of course, issues around literacy, numeracy, parental empowerment and engagement. And the biggest of them all, teacher preparation and professional development, among other issues. Next slide, please. So our table looked something like that. So really it was like a checklist, being able to determine who are the stakeholders and what exactly are they doing. Next slide. So in the course of our work, we realized there are very many challenges regarding foundational learning, but specifically in regards to partnership and coordination, and they are outlined there. Again, I will not need to go through them. Next slide, please. And so after doing our analysis in terms of the 15 countries, we were very glad to note that now all the countries that ADEA has, under ADEA's wings, have strategic partnership that has not been there for many years in terms of government and development partners. It became much evident in all the 15 countries that they had that relationship which was alive. And of course, there was provision of technical expertise and funding to drive foundational learning initiatives. I'll not mention them. These are just a few of the ones. And by the way, most of them are actually represented here today, the various forums. Next slide. We also were glad to note that the partnership are going beyond country level to more regional focus. So AU really coming in strongly, again, represented by the education head, even in this meeting, but more importantly, ADEA being that glue that is bringing the various partners, Semastea, also having that regional wing and PAL network. So we are seeing more cross-sector as well as regional partnerships. So wanting to find out what is happening in Senegal, what is happening in Kenya, what's happening in Zambia or Zimbabwe, for that matter, just to be able to enrich foundational learning initiatives. Next slide, please. What was exciting to me again from this research was the public-private collaborations and around the issues of technology. I think that was highlighted earlier in the morning with tech companies taking center stage with various provisions and tools to actually use in regards to supporting the teachers, regarding support to even learners. So you had even yesterday, even this morning about the different buckets, the teacher facing, learner facing, but also system facing. And one of the ones that was critical, for example, in Kenya, was in regards to having the dashboard, and the Ministry of Education would have the dashboard at their fingertips if they needed to know about data in their ministry regarding foundational learning, but also the publishing sector really being able to thrive in literally all the countries. And I'm glad that, the publishers really have done a good job where we are putting quality books in the learners' hands. Next slide, please. And, somebody asked this morning about where's the place of local funds of knowledge? I was very excited to find that there are many community and faith-based organizations which are driving the process. Sometimes they're the ones who would be the invisible in the research literature, but there's lots that is happening, even supporting the development of orthographies and supporting literacy within families, and also at the school level. So they possess, of course, the local knowledge and even trust that anyone would need to thrive where foundational learning is concerned. And then they are the gatekeepers of culturally relevant and context-specific information that goes to the grassroots. So I'm glad that in all the 15 countries, I know they were available, and we have a name. Really what we needed to do was to generate an Excel sheet that has all these, so we have that information as well. Next slide, please. One of the other things that we were concerned, because anything entrenched in policy is going to succeed and thrive. And so I know with World Bank being very keen on the issue of the national education sector plans or programs, I could see their footprint rather in the 15 countries where governments have been encouraged in all their strategic plans to integrate foundational learning. And the more recent one, even from Kenya, which was launched this year for the next 5 years as an example. Really now you can see that entrenched in the documents as a beginning point, then you have the likelihood of funding being attached to it. And of course, ADEA and the work that they have done with the Foundational Learner Starter Pack. You saw the movie earlier on, the quick movie. So really in terms of policy alignment, that is beginning to happen as well. Next slide, please. And then institutional capacity strengthening. So if you think about system level focused investments are there to strengthen the capacities of ministries of education in literally all the countries, again, with funding from World Bank and other organizations, USAID. I don't want to single any out. They have been involved differently in the different countries, but really emphasizing and almost pegging funding to any activity that is done at institutional capacity strengthening level to the different countries that I studied. Next slide, please. Again, now in terms of coordination, moving quickly through that, within country, we have seen activities that are supporting action, but regional leaders, again, positioning themselves strategically and major single out the Human Capital Africa and the unique role that they have played in like having a peer review mechanism, but also holding ministries of education accountable in terms of foundational learning. What evidence do you have to provide? So when you have the peer learning mechanisms in place, having common tools to be able to interrogate foundational learning, then you're onto something good in terms of even sharing best practices and rallying behind each other to put resources to support. I see that as very good in terms of coordination, as I found out in the research. Next slide, please. Again, at the national level, that is happening. And at the national level, there was a challenge in the countries that I studied, in the sense that if different partners are coming in with slightly different needs, it can lead to duplication of efforts. And so the ministry having a go-to body then manages that very well. Next slide. And then, of course, again, I noted a new trend where now there's a linkage between early childhood. In the past, there has been a disconnect. We begin with grade 1 foundational learning, but there has been a step back in some of the countries now to integrate early childhood, which was very exciting when I saw that, so that we are linking both children in preschool to primary, and then also linking them back, circling back to communities, what is happening at the community level, having a more integrated approach. Next slide. In terms of coordination, again, using data to look at what is happening for decision making. Again, GP, I think it was mentioned earlier, the kind of funding they have provided post-COVID especially has gone a long way in being able to set systems in place. Again, World Bank also insisting on systems in place for people to be able to harvest the data and use it for decision making and funding as well, funding priorities. Next slide. So in terms of a donor support or funding, you can agree with me that there has been a notable increase, particularly of funding agencies interested in foundational learning. I think for the last 10 years, I have seen that reorientation towards foundational learning. And again, with the firm belief that if the foundation is laid right, then of course you are onto your way to giving the children a head start. But I've also seen an increase in local or domestic foundational learning investment, where more budgetary allocation is given to education in all the countries. So when we did our mapping, we could see that slight jump. Of course, the biggest room is room for improvement. Next slide, please. Again, this is a new thing that now funding agencies are pegging funding to results. Show me the results, then I'll be able to support further. And so that really is important for accountability. And then, providing resources where there's going to be a change or moving the needle in the right direction. Next slide, please. Again, the major philanthropists coming in, the foundations. You've seen the new pledge even by Gates Foundation, sorry for the spelling about Hempel. But we are seeing more investment from private foundations being able to provide not only small scale, but really designing for scale, and then what can be replicated in other countries. I've seen a lot of investment, and ESA, for whom I'm a board member actually, as of I think a few months ago, focusing on early career researchers, being able to nurture so that we have a pipeline of people who are interested in research, including that in foundational learning. Next slide, please. Again, private sector, and more importantly is donor diversification. I didn't go to any one country that I didn't find 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 donors focusing on foundational learning. And of course, the challenge there would have been, okay, so how do we coordinate our efforts? But this diversification, of course, people are looking east to China, to Korea, Japan, was our earliest one, but I think coming back slowly again. Next slide, please. So on the way forward, I'm about to finish. Don't get too tired. I think the way forward really is multi-stakeholder collaboration. I don't know that we are going to go back to being in our own silos, being able to strengthen cross-sector, multi-stakeholder collaborations. Of course, leveraging technology, as we've already had even in the morning, it is the way to go with AI in place. Somebody was challenging us, you can develop a book in maybe what, 2 minutes if you gave ChatGPT the right information. And so I'm using that as a silly example, but the point being that really we can leverage technology to leapfrog in areas where we could have failed. Next slide, please. In terms of the regional bodies, really we can do more, again, putting together frameworks that can help us. Once we dispense with foundational learning, I'm sure there's going to emerge other issues. So when we have systems in place, they outlive humanities or people in those systems. So we look forward to AU being here, spearheading those kinds of developments or frameworks and expanding learning assessments. I know one shoe doesn't fit all, but can we have a framework to be able to hold each other accountable? And I know that is going to happen. We have a startup pack, but definitely we have others in terms of successful models that we can look at with proven impact and using evidence to plan. Next slide, please. In terms of the pooling of funds, I know that may sound selfish to some of the people who want to shine alone. Funding agencies sometimes would like to take the lead, but I think this is the way of the future, being able to put our baskets together to forge forward, where we can address all the needs that are related to foundational learning and combining that with the different foundations and all that. And also encouraging local philanthropies and communities because they are much more sustainable when we have also homegrown examples, leveraging expertise from the ground to support those programs would be wonderful. Next slide, please. In terms of capacity building, I think a lot has been said about teacher development. There was a whole session yesterday on teacher development, but if you had $1 million, your best bet would be on the teachers in terms of preparation and professional development and retention, because you also want to retain them. And then, of course, institutional capacity development remains critical. Next slide. The issue of adaptability and responsiveness, I don't know what the future holds. If we had another pandemic, do we have foundational learning systems in place to be able to keep the children engaged so that we do not, all the gains that have been made are not eroded? And sometimes you want to have those best practices that can outlast emergencies. So future-proofing our foundational learning education system, and of course, having feedback loops. What is working, what is not, what can we do? M&E meal approaches. Next slide. I think that should be the last one. In short, the future of foundational learning, I think it's sure, based on what I've had in this forum. And I know ADEA, for whom I did this research, is really very keen to continue holding that torch of foundational learning. And we know that it can be sustained and scaled when we have great partnerships, coherent coordination mechanisms, and then being able to diversify. We do not want to leave out the issue of inclusive, scalable interventions that are backed by those strong partnerships and coordination, and of course, funding that goes to it. And with that, then, thank you very much for listening to me.
Right, thank you very much, Professor Helen, for that wonderful presentation. It's nice to see partnerships and coordination happening around research on foundational learning. And I think part of it answers some of the questions raised from Dr. Tieno's presentation around the need for more funding, the need for more collaboration, even across between researchers, amongst researchers. So I would want to turn to the audience. Please, if you have questions for the presenters. So like I said earlier, this is largely going to be an interaction, an interactive session. Okay, so one hand up. Okay, two. Can I have three before we move to the next round? Okay, we can start with the two. All right. Please, can we have the microphone? Yes, sir. You can go first.
Merci pour la parole. Je me nomme Seni Ouedraogo. Je suis du ministère de l'Éducation au Burkina Faso. Je voulais dans un premier temps saluer les deux présentateurs pour la qualité donc des différentes communications. Je vais surtout m'appesantir sur la présentation de M. Diallo. Et il est évident que les résultats des différentes recherches permettent d'améliorer fondamentalement les compétences de base. Mais pour que cela soit, il faut effectivement une étroite collaboration entre d'une part les chercheurs, les décideurs éducatifs et bien sûr les donateurs et les financeurs. Si on arrive à mettre en place un triangle entre les trois acteurs, il va de soi que les résultats produits par les chercheurs puissent permettre de promouvoir les compétences de base. Donc, je voulais qu'on questionne ensemble ce triangle. Est-ce qu'à l'heure actuelle, les chercheurs arrivent à travailler en réseau avec les décideurs éducatifs et les financeurs? Si on arrive à approfondir donc cette thématique, toutes les productions qui seront faites seront suffisamment exploitées par les partenaires financiers, les partenaires éducatifs et l'ensemble de la communauté des apprentissages. Mais lorsque cela n'est pas effectif, il va de soi qu'on aura des milliers d'études, mais en réalité, le taux d'utilisation des résultats sera toujours faible. Donc, on aurait dépensé pour rien. Et pour éviter donc, entre griffes, ce gaspillage, en tout cas, je recommande fortement que dans les différents pays, dans les différentes institutions, on mette en place un réseau constitué des décideurs politiques, des chercheurs et des financeurs pour qu'ensemble, on puisse créer une dynamique permettant donc de mener de bonnes recherches et de faire en sorte que les résultats soient suffisamment exploités au profit donc des apprenants de nos différents pays. Quant à Madame Hélène, j'ai salué surtout l'esprit de mettre en place un continuum éducatif. Si cela est, ça va réellement permettre aux différents acteurs, aux différents partenaires techniques et financiers d'assurer effectivement un continuum qui va du préscolaire au primaire, du primaire au post-primaire et du post-primaire au secondaire. Si on arrive à assurer ce continuum, vous allez donc constater que les défis qui ont été relevés seront ensemble questionnés, relevés et mis en œuvre donc par les différents acteurs. Là également, je recommande on puisse affirmer la nécessité de mettre en place un continuum éducatif pour permettre une gestion des flux allant du préscolaire jusqu'au secondaire. Je vous remercie.
All right, thank you very much for that. Okay, so the next question on that side. No, no. Yeah.
Thank you. I think I would like to thank the two presenters for their gratifying presentation. I have a question to the first presenter, actually, which is quite similar to what the gentleman has just mentioned. Actually, doing research is one thing. It's pleasing to oneself as a researcher. But it becomes more gratifying when we see the outcomes of research transcending policies or any other documentation. So my question is to the first presenter, do you have any strategy to encourage policymakers or any other actors to use your findings in their policies? Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for that. All right.
Okay.
Skip this, but can we have you introduce yourself before the question, so at least we know who's speaking? Sorry, I forgot to say that earlier.
Ok. Moi, c'est Diallo Marsaliou, senior éducation spécialiste à la Banque mondiale. Je suis basé à Conakry, en Guinée. Et je voudrais d'abord féliciter les deux présentateurs pour la qualité de la des présentations. Ma question consiste à savoir que depuis quelques années, la Banque mondiale, en collaboration avec l'Association des universités africaines, finançait un projet qu'on appelle AC Impact. C'est un projet de recherche et qui vise à améliorer la qualité des apprentissages au niveau de l'enseignement supérieur. Et comme on parle de recherche, j'ai vu que vous avez capitalisé les recherches surtout en termes de PhD et autres. Je m'adresse à M. Diallo principalement. Et je vois aussi qu'il y a des pays, parmi les 4 pays que vous avez présentés, dont le Ghana et le Sénégal, font partie des pays qui abritent ces centres d'excellence. Est-ce que, en capitalisant les différentes recherches que vous avez présentées ici, est-ce que vous avez tenu compte des recherches qu'il y a eu dans ces universités, dans ces centres d'excellence? Parce qu'en tout, je crois qu'il y a 52 centres en Afrique. Donc, est-ce que vous avez tenu compte de des recherches qui ont été financées ou appuyées dans ces différentes universités en termes de PhD, master, etc., pour pouvoir préparer votre présentation? Je vous remercie.
All right. So I think you take the first 2 questions before we go back to the audience. Dr. Tiago.
Okay, thank you very much for your questions. Some comments, but we can try to answer. There is a question around collaboration between researchers, funders, and also policymakers. So we are working on that, and we used to organize dissemination events. For example, for this project, we had a dissemination event where we brought together policymakers, funders, practitioners to share the main findings of our mapping. So this is the first step. The second step also is we notice a disconnect between local researchers and policymakers, especially in our focus countries. So what we are going to do next is try to connect to them better to make sure their research is policy oriented. So we are going also to fund some research that will be aligned with the research with country-specific research agendas. So that will ensure that policymakers will easily use the findings. And one thing also we are planning to do is to involve policymakers, to inform them about the ongoing research to facilitate the uptake of the findings. So it's something we are working on, and it's not easy, but I think that we will be there. There is another question about the research being conducted by some universities funded by the World Bank. Yeah, so in our mapping, we do not make any distinction. So all studies that meet our criteria have been included. So regardless or whatever the research may be, so as long as it meets our criteria, we include it. So in PhD thesis, articles, and so on. Thank you. Back to you.
All right, thank you very much. So I just want to, I was going to come to you, Professor Helen, about the point around the, the triangle, the tripartite kind of relationship between researchers, decision makers, and funders.
Okay, thank you for that question. One of the things I would like to emphasize is that most of the major funding agencies are now putting it as part of their requirements, policy relevant outputs or translation products. So that is one thing, that any research that you undertake and is funded, say by USAID, World Bank, does it have policy relevance? Is it aligned to the national education sector plans? That is number one, to just ensure that we are seeing uptake of that research that you undertake. And that was evident in the countries that I went to. And secondly, once this funding has provided, I have seen more recently it being followed up by what we call co-creation. So the funding agencies co-creating the research from inception with the Ministry of Education and researchers. This could be university researchers. So it's a co-creation process from the beginning to the end. And in that way, then we have one joint ownership, and therefore uptake becomes the natural result. And ADEA has been in the forefront to ensure that these three are working together. I am a researcher at the University of Nairobi, but I also support ADEA work. I support, for example, World Bank as a short-term consultant. And this linked in a forum like this one. You have funders represented, you have researchers represented, and you have the policy decision makers represented. So this is how the information gets carried around, from production of the research to translation into policy relevant products that then are taken up by the ministry. And that then enables that circle to work very well. At the end of the day, you don't want to do research for research's sake. Who is going to consume? You have to think about the consumer of your research from the outset of doing the research. And in terms of the continuum between ECE, that is why you have organizations like UNICEF being in the building, in the forum today, to partner with other funding agencies who look at primary all the way to university, so that that integration happens. For a long time, we ignored that phase of children's life, but the first 1,000 days of a child's life are critical. And so if we integrate within that nurturing care and stimulation around literacy and numeracy, social and emotional learning, then we actually giving these children a head start. And so that collaboration at donor level then compels different governments to integrate their programs. So for example, in Rwanda here, you could see the early childhood working together with the ones in the or basic education to ensure that no child is left behind, regardless of what their needs are. And I think they have done a multi-sectoral approach where they integrate nutrition and health. And in that way, then when children are assured they'll come to school and they'll have a meal, learning is happening, they are having something to eat. Also not leaving behind children with special needs. And more recently, there's been a lot of talk with USAID around out of school children, but also those in conflict situations. So there is a lot. And I think the funding agencies, of course, will direct where the funding will go, but governments are increasingly, sharing their national education sector plan. In all the 15 countries, I could access those documents online. It wasn't like that 10 years ago, but it's a requirement, say, from World Bank that put your documents online so that we can see what your national education sector plan is, and we align our funding to your national priorities. So I see that the three different circles work together in that way, all the way from the bottom to the university level. And if the foundation is firm, university becomes much easier. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I think I'm just reminded of what the Minister for Higher Education said. If you cultivate foundational learning, then obviously you'd have the other sectors of education grow. So you'd have secondary school grow and higher education grow. So back to the audience, any additional questions? We can take one more. Okay, Lucy, just one more question.
Hi, good afternoon. Lucy Heddy from ADEA, and thanks to the presenters and the moderator for such a fascinating conversation. Here's my question. Helen, your presentation was so optimistic about trends in foundational learning, but what we see globally is a trend of downward investment in education. Is foundational learning a kind of island in the storm that's doing well despite what's happening elsewhere, or should we be worried? And similar question to Tieno. I know you presented figures for funding for foundational learning research. Are there any differences between funding for foundational learning research and research in other areas of education? Thank you.
Please go on.
All right, so I will take the first, I'll be the first to respond. Yes, I ended on a hopeful note, and these are the reasons why increasingly we have seen government taking ownership of foundational learning and beginning to drive the research agenda or the implementation agenda. In the past, it was sort of like the funding agencies determining the trajectory of the programming. But now there's a turnaround where the government are saying, these are our priority areas, how would you support us? And so in regards to foundational learning, that gives me hope, because then the funding is aligned with national priorities, and the funding is going towards the critical needs. In this case, what do we need to do with the teachers? So the funding available is going into professional development of the teachers, preparation of the materials. And once the teachers have the capacity to teach, and also leveraging on local capacity, then it's likely to be sustainable. So no one is jetting in with an idea, but the idea is being co-created, is being refined on the ground, and there is progress that has been made where teacher development or professional development is concerned. We have a documentation of best practices. So I think those are likely to outlast any funding support, even if it dwindles. All this information are online on the USAID website, for example, FCDO, whatever the funding agency is, the documents are out there online for people to fall back on in the unlikely event that there is no funding. So for me, when you have best practices captured somewhere, the teachers are beginning to see the value, the ministry is driving the process, we have hope. I don't know that you can rely on anything else other than being positive that it will happen. And the teachers are beginning to embrace. I liked what Ben Piper said earlier, for so long as you keep it simple. The teacher needs to know that you're helping them. And I know because I am a teacher trainer and I've been involved in some of those projects with different organizations to make it easy for the teacher. So there is hope because the teachers are liking the way in which they are being taught how to nurture children to learn to read. So they're talking about counting, reading, and being able to write as well. So they have a foundation for life as far as I'm concerned.
All right, thank you very much. Sorry, I've been told that we are out of time, but then just leveraging on the point, your last point around making things simpler for teachers. I think over time, we've moved from teachers using the rote approach, rote learning, and much of what we're seeing now in terms of pedagogical strategies in the classroom is largely because of research, which has shown ways in which we can simplify this, make it easier for teachers to transfer, build the skills of the kids. So really huge thanks to research for getting to this point. All right, so thank you very much, everyone. We don't have a lot of time left, pretty much no time left. But then I think that what we've really heard here has been quite insightful. So understanding that there's actually a lot of work going on in Africa by African researchers, but then obviously still room for more coordination, room for more partnerships, and definitely more government-driven needs being emphasized in the research that we need to drive foundational learning improvements across Africa. So thank you very much for coming, but I'll just quickly share an announcement. So there's a foundational learning policy panel that would be holding in the auditorium upstairs, so where we were earlier on in the morning. So just to let you know, so it's not just the 2 rooms here, but we would have a session holding there. And to spike your interest, we're gonna have that panel session with a representation of key ministers from 3 countries at least. So that's to spike your interest a lot more. But I'm not saying everybody should leave this way, but let's know that there's something happening. The next session. Yeah. All right. So thank you very much for coming, for joining us. I'll see you in the next room.
Good afternoon. Thank you, everyone. In fact, as the schedule has been evolving, just to let you know, we do have a little bit of a break, and that's because the ministers are in a round table, which ends at 4:25. So you've got a little bit of a break between now, it's 3:55, and I did want to let you know, we had just mentioned there is a foundational learning policy session, how to set up a foundational learning strategy in the auditorium at 4:25. We have got a session in this room that will focus on school feeding, health and hygiene at 4:25. And in MH4, there is a session on play-based learning. So those are the options, but we do have a little bit of a break as we wait for ministers to join us. I understand that the school feeding session in this room will also have representation, some ministerial representation. So please keep that information on hand, and we'll see you at 4:25 in either of those three rooms. Thanks so much.
Please stand. The round table is over there, closer to me. So if you're interested in education financing, you will find the table over there. And then the one that has my face, health, hygiene, programs, and student success, is on the left. Where is our table? Where did Hiba go? Somebody stand. Yes, please stand up. And just on your far left in the corner. Thank you. So those are our three roundtables. We're going to start our conversations there in parallel while we, of course, wait for the acting early panel that will join us. So without further ado, please disperse. Do you remember where your favorite table is? Does anyone need to find them again, or are we happy? Okay, we are happy. So please let us kick off our roundtable conversations. Thank you. I'm not seeing people moving to the round tables. Oh no, let me tell, there's breaking news, yes. Oh boy. Okay, wait. Okay, breaking news, everyone. The ministers have finished and they are on their way. So please, if you remember your round tables, please already go and sit there if you want to. But otherwise, it seems we're going to start with our ministerial panel. And I'm going to hand over to my colleagues who will look after us for that session. Thank you. But please enjoy your conversations already at the tables. We have to keep ourselves entertained.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. We're going to start with our opening. So welcome to this very vital panel today, the Roundtable on Enhancing School Feeding, School Meals Programs to Support Better Nutrition and Foundational Learning Outcomes across Africa. So as we gather here today at this Africa Foundational Learning Exchange, this is a reminder for all of us to share our commitments to building resilient education systems. Today, our discussions will focus on strategies for integrating these programs into national policies and ensuring sustainability. We're very honored to have ministers and experts with us here today, each bringing invaluable insights and experiences. And to formally start us off, I would like to invite the AU Education, Science, Technology, and Innovation Head of Division, Ms. Sophia Ashipala. Sophia, over to you.
Thank you very much, Hiba, and a very good afternoon to each one of you. Dear Honorable Ministers in absentia, I know that they are still on their way to join us. Education representative, oh, I see that some are here. Thank you so much. We really appreciate your presence and also that you are joining our session. High-level government officials, representative from ministries of education and countries from AU member states, dear partners, colleagues, and friends, a warm welcome to this session. It is a privilege to welcome all of you to this significant roundtable discussion on enhancing school feeding programs for better nutrition and education. As we gather here during the African Foundation Learning Exchange, during this momentous year, the Year of Education, proclaimed by the African Union to emphasize the transformative role of education in shaping the future of our continent. The theme for this year, as we know, Educate an African Fit for the 21st century, building a resilient education system for inclusive lifelong learning, enable our young people to meet the demands of the rapidly changing world. Today's session, however, will focus on powerful yet often unappreciated lever for foundational learning, which is school feeding programs. These initiatives serve as a bridge between nutrition and education, ensuring that our children receive the sustenance they need to grow, to learn, and to excel in schools. The connection is clear. When students are well nourished, they can focus, they can attend school more regularly, and they are more likely to succeed academically. Beyond improving individual lives, these programs serve a broader societal purpose, helping us lay a strong foundation for a healthier, more educated, and more resilient African society. In line with the African Union Agenda 2063, we recognize that education and health are intertwined pillars of sustainable development. A well-fed student is not just a better learner, they are the future leader equipped with the skills, with the knowledge, and health to contribute to the continent growth. Today, we aim to delve into essential role of school feeding programs in advancing this vision, focusing on how we can scale these initiatives to ensure every child, no matter where they live, can access the foundational right to a healthy meal and quality education. We have gathered here as esteemed and diverse group of stakeholders, from policymakers, governments, officials, representatives from international organizations, non-profit educators, school administrators, nutrition experts. Together, you represent the expertise, the passion, and the commitment needed to tackle both the challenges and the opportunities surrounding the school feeding programs. So as we look at the outcomes of this discussion, we envisioned increased awareness, shared insight on challenges and practical solutions, and actionable strategy that can be implemented across Africa. Together, we can create a comprehensive framework to advocate for the inclusion of school feeding programs in national and regional education policies, drawing upon successful case studies and mobilizing resources for sustainable change. Our collective effort, however, will help forge a future where school feeding programs are widely recognized and supported as foundational to education success and a driver for social and economic development. On behalf of the African Union Commission and all our esteemed partners, I would like to thank each of you for your commitment and your presence here today. We are excited that your ideas that you are going to share during the roundtables and the discussion that you are going to have, strategy and partnership will emerge from this gathering. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sophia, for opening the session. I would like to now invite Dr. Mustafa from the World Bank, who's going to give us a short presentation on school health and nutrition. Mr. Mustafa.
Thank you very much, Hiba, and ladies and gentlemen. It's my pleasure to share a perspective on our global engagement on the impact on school feeding and school health more generally, on learning outcomes. And it's a very important area of interventions that can not only maximize impact on learning outcome, but on the future of our generation. So it's a gateway to a better learning outcomes and more future in terms of economic productivity. So let's go to the slide. So I'm going to present why it's important to invest in school meals and school health, and also what have been our global engagement over the last 10 years, and to introduce you also about our new Healthy Saber tools, which is a comprehensive combination of school health, nutrition, and meals. So why it's important, slide, why it's important to invest in learning in school health and meals. So evidence has shown that 70% of the wealth in the high income countries is attributed to human capital, showing how important, slide, come back on the slide, the previous slide, sorry, it's going too fast. Come on the previous slide. Yeah, okay. Showing that how important it's to invest in school health and school meals to maximize impact on long-term productivity and economic growth. And children can only receive effective education if they are in school and prepared to learn. So no matter what is your classroom, no matter what investment you put in learning environment, in teachers, those investments will need to be translated in learning outcome, even only if the children are prepared to receive it and to integrate it. So that's why we said from the education perspective, it requires necessarily a balance between a learner-centered approach and a learner's well-being attention. Slide. So continuing on the why it's important to invest on school meals, we have recently many researchers, many evidence that show the impact on school meals and school health in learning outcome, in promoting children's and gender and other cognitive skills. So let me emphasize on these figures where if you look at the brain architecture, so you have seen in the left side that the maximum of impact that we can have from children when we invest in their children's well-being is over the next first 10 years, 1,000 days. So, and if you look at the figures in the left side, so you see that the interconnections between the cognitive skills, the socio-emotional skills, and the brain development happened in the next 1,000 days and the next following 7,000 days. And here correspond to our fundamental learning period, and which is very sensitive. And if you look at the right figures, you see the numerous ramifications that we have that will determine the potential for children to learn when they are well nourished and well taken in terms of nutrition and health. So, and for children who are malnourished, you see that there are limitations in terms of ramification and connection, and obviously in terms of what it will be in terms of learning outcomes. Slides. So we have recently our DIMES, which is an impact evaluation group inside the World Bank, that also present many evidence, and including the recent one, studies that have been conducted in Gambia, Burundi, Jordan, and other countries. And it shows in Jordan, for example, how learning outcomes, how investment in school health and school meals has reduced dropout rate, retention, and increased learning outcomes, even in Gambia also. And I'm very pleased to see the Minister of Gambia here, because we are running a program with them under his leadership on implementing the Healthy Saber. So slide, if you see the 1,000 days, I was saying how it's critical to shape the brain of the children and determine their future potential learning outcomes. And if you miss these 100 days, it will be very difficult to catch up. Even though literature has said it's possible to catch up over the next 7,000 days, but it will be very difficult. So that's why it's explained by literature that this is the main barriers for many children to learn. So, and it's obvious, better learners mean better learning outcomes. Slides, and you see the chart on the right side, how African countries and other countries are classified in terms of staying and out of school children. So come on the next slide. So here, how do they complement one another? We can say that school, health and education are the two sides of the same coins, meaning that if you invest in health, you will promote also learning outcomes. If you promote in learning outcomes also, you will influence positively the health and the well-being of the population. So, and we have a range of intervention like deworming, like the school meals, school nutrition, like water hygiene and sanitation, and vision screens. All that school health intervention has yielded to a significant impact on learning outcomes, as it's being shown in the human development outcomes at the right levels. Slide. So here I presented a short of theory of change between how investment in very dimension of school health, whether or school needs, will lead to learning outcome or children well-being, depending on the specificity or the kind of approach you select. For example, the last one on the local agriculture production. If you look at the Brazilian example, which is among the best practices, and I think that we have been with a delegation of Cameroon recently in Brasilia, learning from the PNAE project, where the government is really emphasizing on putting in place a strong and sustainable school feeding program, and the results have been demonstrated by very evidence in terms of attendance, internal efficiency, learning outcomes, retention for girls, etc., etc., and even for the market, the productivity and the riches of the population. So, and it's very important on that side also. It's not only yield results on learning outcome, but it provide also results on the economic growth, the productivity, and also create other dimension in terms of impact that at scale in the economy of the countries. So let's move to the next slide. So here I presented some reviews of experience, but we can pass this slide. You can, if you are interested, I can share many results of the evidence recently and the previous also experience that showcase how important it is. So what are the World Bank engagement over the since 2018? We have been investing in this area for a long time, but we have selected 71 projects that really integrate in a very deeply manner the school meals and school health in their components or subcomponents. And it's around 20 million children coverage and around 300 million we invest in that. Obviously, we'll be continuing to advocate for more investment in school health and school needing because of the impact it has in learning outcomes and fundamental learning potential. And we worked very closely with the World Food Program on those interventions. Slide. So now, coming on our Healthy Saber tool. You know, previously, before 2012, we had, if you remember, we had two Saber on health, school health, Saber on school feeding. Now, in the perspective of human capital, we are coming up with a comprehensive school meals and school health in the perspective of human development. So it's a comprehensive combination of school health, feeding, and nutrition to support countries' institutional capacity and legal framework. So go in the next slide. We're going to see how it's structured. So you see, we have the core modules. We have the essential school health services modules, and we have the school meals modules. The core modules is mandatory for countries who are interested to implement the Healthy Saber. And it's a prerequisite for World Food Program, for countries being supported financially to really do the healthy saber, because it will give you a broader picture of the state of your school health, school meals, and water hygiene and other complementary services. So let's go to the next slide. The format is here. Now we improve it a little bit more compared to the previous saber. We have the policy and regulatory framework assessment, the financial capacity of the country to own and sustain the program, the institutional capacity also, the design of the program, and the community's roles, which is very important in making it also sustainable and very affordable and effective for countries. Slide. So here are the status for where we came from and where we are at this moment. So I think that it's a 5 years commitment since 2021. And now we are in the situation where the healthy saber is developed and have been reviewed by many UN agencies, including also the research consortium of the School Meal Coalition. And also now we have a list of countries, 40 countries that express their need to implement the healthy saber. And it is very transformative in the way it shapes your dialogue and also provide you with guidance on how you invest and how you make it profitable for your children. Next slide. So I'm sure many of you are asking how much it costs to implement the saber. I'm assuring you, it doesn't cost too much. It's around 80K US dollar, so meaning that it just integrates the cost of the workshop you implement, but it's an ownership process where the country will be in the driving seat of supporting and implementing the healthy saber. Because to ensure sustainability, we need the country to be on the driving seat in implementing the healthy saber. At least we have regional teams that will provide technical assistance and support to make it functional. Slide. So the process I just presented here on the Togo, who was the first African countries to implement the healthy saber, and now we have a list of 5 countries that the dialogue has been started with them, including Gambia, Sri Lanka, Iraq, and the 4th country was and Cote d'Ivoire. Cote d'Ivoire also has expressed the need, but we have, as I was saying, 40 countries that express the need, and we will be doing it phase by phase. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mustafa, for the presentation. It's quite interesting to see how much we can actually input. It's only 80,000. And imagine the benefits that you can actually get for the children that we have over the next couple of years. I now call upon Ruth Kagia to come and do the next session.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, Mustafa. That was very helpful. As I call up the ministerial panel, maybe you can put up the short video as they come up. And I'll invite the ministers to, it's not showing. I invite the ministers to come up here so that we can discuss, start the discussion. And that little video you can be looking at as they come up. Minister Moyo from Zimbabwe. Minister Gomez from Gambia. Mr. Omogo from Kenya. Edapan, Namibia. Namibia, yes. Dr. Yusuf Bodu from Guinea. And
mamangu alikuwa anafanya kazi ya cleaning which includes lakini kazi ikakuwa imeisha,
We actually don't even need
so
the
ikabidi
sound.
tuanze
We
kuhustle.
don't need the sound because
So
it is, yeah. Have I left out anybody? Gambia, Zimbabwe, Cameroon, Kenya, Namibia, and Guinea. No, they're not all here. Gambia. Namibia. Who are we missing here? We'll start with those here, but you can bring the others up. I had not appreciated just how important school feeding is until we did this report in 2022, looking at the impact of COVID on adolescents. And we interviewed adolescents from across the country. And this particular video really struck me. The economic hardships that kids who are now out of school because of COVID were experiencing. And the very first interview, the first girl got pregnant because her boyfriend invited her for a meal and she hadn't eaten for the full day. And as she says, everything went south after that and she got pregnant. Had there been a school meal provided, this would not have happened. And as Mustafa has said, as Sophie has said, we have underestimated the importance of school meals, not just in getting kids to school and keeping them there, but also as an opportunity to link up learning to health, to look at issues of deworming, basic issues of physical health, but also to strengthen their nutrition. Further, and that is becoming an equally important issue, the returns to the investment on school health are very high. For every dollar that you put into school feeding, you can reap benefits as much as 35 times over. And that is evidence from across the world. To say nothing of how it promotes local agriculture and generates employment. So there are a lot of advantages to that. But there's nothing like hearing it from the horse's mouth in terms of, even given all those benefits, what has been your experience? And I'll start with you, Minister Moyo. Because of, we are running so behind schedule, I'll give you 2 minutes, maximum 3, to just tell us a little bit about sort of the highlights of your school feeding progress, the opportunities and the challenges, and maybe the way forward. Mr. Moyo.
Thank you very much, moderator. My name is Honorable Dr. Moyo from Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is a signatory of the School Meals Coalition, where we made a serious commitment to providing healthy food to our students from early childhood development and care up to upper sixth form. By this commitment, we are saying that every school day, we are providing meals for all the learners in my country. And why it is important to provide meals, it's a way of motivating our students so that the attendance will also be improved because there will be food at their disposal. The other important issue is the issue of a balanced diet. It's not just food. We are providing a nutritious meal every day, and that is very important and highly indispensable because the government is willing to support us. Every year we provide, we supply the government with bids for school meals. And usually we are given an allocation for meals that we provide to our students every term. We have 3 terms in Zimbabwe. And the advantages of school meals, according to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's important to feed students so that they are motivated to learn, and also the outcomes and outputs will be very encouraging, because the research has shown that where school students receive school meals, they also tend to perform better in terms of performance. And as you are aware, Zimbabwe has a literacy rate of 94%. As I'm speaking. And also the other advantage, we have decided to, despite the support that we receive from the fiscus, we have also resorted to the heritage-based curriculum, where we have emphasized critical thinking skills among students from ECD up to Form 6. And by that we are saying we have introduced the school business unit, where we are saying we want every school to fundraise towards procurement of food to supplement what we receive from government. So we have deliberately drilled boreholes in most of the schools, not all of them. So, and we've come up with a nutritious garden. And that brings together the school together with local communities. The school meals has stimulated agriculture, because the local community is also encouraged to provide supplies to the school. And also they can work at the school garden to complement the efforts of the school. And in the process, that has raised a lot of revenue for schools. Then the other very important point is that we also encourage fundraising activities like having fowl runs, piggery, and many other projects, so that they can supplement and complement what they receive from government. And because it's very important, the issue of health of our students is critical, because we value it to a very large extent. And that has contributed to a very big way in improving our results in Zimbabwe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. Let's clap for him. Very cogent. You can hear me from this. Member of the School Meals Coalition, where now 103 countries have joined as a member of the School Meals Coalition. Interesting about turning school meals into a small cottage industry that is bringing incomes to schools. That's quite interesting. Before I let you go, Minister, how many meals do you serve in a day?
We have made a commitment to provide at least 1 hot meal a day, and it has been the trend to provide 1 meal a day. And I need to commend and appreciate the efforts that are done by the First Lady, Honorable Dr. Auxilia Mnangagwa. She has carried out tremendous work in our schools, moving around the 10 provinces of Zimbabwe, providing healthy meals to the schools. Next slide, please, because I want you to show, even myself, I've participated in because I see may you go to a slide where the Honorable Minister also participates in feeding students.
How many students do you feed in a day?
I can't give statistics, because every school should provide meals. And also the other very important critical point is that in Zimbabwe, we have a drought in this year. And because of the El Nino-induced drought, the government has now introduced an emergency school feeding program to complement the other disbursements that are done by the government through the fiscus, through the nation. Yes, on that slide, you can see yours truly putting on, you have removed the slide. Maybe it's there, I don't know. Yes, over there. That's where you see Honorable Minister Moyo participating in feeding together, being assisted by our patron, the First Lady of Zimbabwe, Honorable Her Excellency Dr. Mnangagwa.
Thank you very much. There's nothing like seeing it in action, Minister. Cameroon, you have achieved impressive results from school feeding programs. what lessons have you learned for scaling up your school feeding programs that you could share with us?
Merci de me passer la parole. Je suis Madame Mamat Daiferle-Madeleine. Je représente le ministre de l'Éducation de base du Cameroun. Le Cameroun, en ce qui concerne l'alimentation en milieu scolaire, a compris que c'est un outil pour l'amélioration des performances et aussi le maintien des enfants à l'école. Nous avons commencé un programme avec la Banque mondiale, avec le prêt dans le cadre du programme Pulsar et avec la Banque islamique de développement et la BAD, afin de développer un programme alimentaire dans les écoles avec l'utilisation des produits locaux. Et depuis des années, le PAM donne de l'alimentation aux enfants à l'école avec Nassen Solutions. À ce jour, nous avons déjà donné aux enfants à 89 054 élèves qui bénéficient des repas scolaires. Il s'agit du riz enrichi, du haricot, de l'huile végétale et aussi la création des jardins scolaires. Nous avons créé 207 jardins scolaires dans les régions de l'Est, du Nord et du Nord-Est Cameroun. Et du Nord-Est Cameroun, s'il vous plaît. Donc, le programme de l'alimentation scolaire nous permet surtout la rétention des filles à l'école dans les zones d'éducation prioritaire. Nous leur donnons des rations sèches pour que les filles ne puissent pas abandonner l'école. Et le Cameroun aujourd'hui, dans son budget de 2024, a introduit une ligne pour l'alimentation scolaire. Et nous sommes en train de valider la politique nationale de l'alimentation scolaire. Voilà où le Cameroun est en train d'aller en ce qui concerne l'alimentation en milieu scolaire. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. 89,000 children under the program. Namibia, good to have you here. What innovative approaches has your government used to address the challenges in delivering nutrition programs, particularly in low-income settings?
Thank you so much for the honor bestowed on me to participate in this panel discussion. In Namibia, we have just over 3 million people altogether. It's a fairly vast country with its 800,000 square kilometers, but there are areas where it's very sparsely populated, and these vast rural areas are often also, like our counterparts and neighbors, struck by drought. So the government has an annual budgeted for Namibia school feeding program, and it serves over 468,000 meals. That is nearly all primary school learners. And it consists out of a maize blend that is over 60% maize, added 25% of soya, salt and sugar. And this maize blend is then daily prepared. In the most impoverished areas, we do provide up to 3 meals a day and a take-home ration. So that is similar to the other countries of attracting learners to schools, but also then providing that nutrition. What we have found is that, yes, this is a national contract that is managed centrally, and we are working closely with the regions in order to stimulate socioeconomic growth in communities by encouraging school gardens, community gardens, and sourcing from smallholder farmers. This is all against the background that close to 25% of our under 5-year-olds are stunted. And if we look at the multidimensional poverty index, that is also over 48%. And the younger, the most vulnerable. So we see this is a severe need to support food and nutrition in the context of foundational learning. So I submit.
Thank you very much. I like the way you link stunting to school feeding, to school gardens. Thank you. And you feed, you said 4,000 children are fed. Kenya, Kenya hosted the School Meals Coalition, a meeting 10 days ago, and you showcased some very innovative programs, including the innovative programs that the Nairobi County is implementing. Kenya also showcased what you're doing in terms of climate change and clean fuel and sustainability. My question, and I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit here, but you can handle it because you have a very strong school feeding program. How has the government worked to ensure sustainability and long-term financing for school feeding programs?
Give me a bit of time, I'm just coming.
Okay, why don't we get somebody else as you get ready, as you get organized. Can we do Guinea? Or Gambia? Gambia. Gambia, my question for you is, how has the government work to support multisectoral coordination impacted the implementation of the national school program?
Thank you very much. For the Gambia, we are working on the school feeding program, and it is as highlighted earlier on, we've seen its relevance, areas it's addressing different factors so that were mentioned earlier on, but because of time, let me go straight to the point. We now gone to think of trying to do two things because over 300,000 students under this program. One, based on the results, positive results coming out from this exercise, we, under the supervision and with guidance from the ministry, the World Bank, and also the World Food Program, we're trying to conduct, we did in fact conduct an evaluation on the effects of school feeding programs in the Gambia. This evaluation, which should be launched later this month, covers critical outcomes from school feeding programs, including improved food security, well-being attendance, and reduced grade repetition. Findings highlights, especially among benefits for girls, whose food security improves by 16% when warm school meals are provided. The second point is empowering local communities through school feeding. As highlighted earlier on in the Gambia, by providing food locally, school feeding programs create reliable demand for smallholder farmers, support job creation, and strengthen local economies, making school feeding a community-driven program that builds economic resilience. And the third point that I would want to highlight, and that was mentioned earlier on by the bank, is that's the next step. What next? So we thought that with the healthy saver diagnosis, that should be the way forward. The Gambia will partner with the World Bank and World Food Program to implement the healthy saver diagnostic tool, positioning the Gambia among those countries that have already taken the lead in Africa in this comprehensive approach. We will convene a multi-sectoral task force to assess our school health and nutrition policies, aiming to improve nutrition, strengthen local food systems, and ensure our school feeding programs are sustainable and effective. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I like that approach, setting up a multi-sectoral task force, because school feeding by definition is multi-sectoral: agriculture, health, and education, and maybe. Dr. Yusuf, partnerships. How have you leveraged partnerships to across sectors to expand access to school meals programs in hard-to-reach communities? And what lessons can you share from your experience?
Thank you. Je vais devoir m'expliquer en français et je me sens beaucoup plus à l'aise en français qu'autre chose. Effectivement, à l'image de mes prédécesseurs, la Guinée a aussi un programme national de cantine scolaire, nous appelons. Ce programme est financé d'une part par le gouvernement guinéen et d'autre par le programme mondial pour l'alimentation, le PAM. L'année dernière, par exemple, à cause des contraintes budgétaires, le pays a connu d'énormes difficultés pour pouvoir garder les enfants à l'école, mais c'est grâce à l'accompagnement du PAM que les enfants ont été maintenus à l'école, qui ont joué non seulement la partie qui leur revient en couvrant plus de 1000 écoles, et contrairement aux 401 écoles que le gouvernement continuait à subventionner. Effectivement, ce programme, comment il fonctionne? C'est à l'image de la Gambie et d'autres pays. Il y a un programme qui est établi pour pouvoir permettre aux producteurs locaux de bien écouler leurs marchandises. Donc, tout ce que le PAM achète en termes de repas chauds ou de repas sèches, repas secs, c'est acheté avec les producteurs locaux. J'étais pas prévu pour ce panel-ci, mais j'ai été un peu choqué du fait que la Banque mondiale, au-delà des efforts qu'elle fournit pour accompagner nos pays en général et en particulier la Guinée, n'intervient pas dans le cadre des cantines scolaires. Pourquoi? Parce que maintenir les enfants à l'école est une question extraordinaire, parce que les parents, avec l'influence de la culture sur les enfants, les parents préfèrent prendre les enfants, d'aller faire les travaux champêtres, souvent pour pouvoir travailler, avoir des produits pour vivrier, pour pouvoir se nourrir. Donc, lorsque un parent, on lui demande d'amener son enfant à l'école, il se pose la question, lorsque mon enfant va à l'école, qui va travailler pour moi? Parce que moi, je prends de l'âge. Donc, on passe par toute une pédagogie en impliquant les ONG pour pouvoir sensibiliser les parents. Donc, on convainc les parents qu'une fois que vous laissez votre enfant à venir à l'école, il a accès à la nourriture. Ça lui permettra, en plus des kits scolaires, des kits hygiéniques, notamment des jeunes filles, les enfants ont accès à ces repas chauds et froids pour pouvoir les permettre de rester à l'école. L'un des plus grands défis, c'est quoi? C'est la poursuite de ce programme-là. Étant donné qu'il y a des contraintes budgétaires, nous estimons cette année, nous avons pris avec, y compris la PAM, plus de 124 à 126 élèves, ce qui veut dire plus de 1600 écoles seront prises en compte, dont 1200 pris couvertes complètement par le PAM et les 401 et quelques qu'on essaye d'augmenter jusqu'à 1000 écoles par le budget national. Donc, c'est un sujet majeur de mon point de vue, dans la mesure où si on veut appliquer les politiques publiques au niveau des zones rurales, notamment où il y a ces problèmes-là, notamment les jeunes filles qui ont des problèmes de société, qui ont des problèmes hygiéniques, qui ont des problèmes d'alimentation, il va falloir s'attaquer à la racine en augmentant les investissements au-delà de la construction des infrastructures et les questions de cantines scolaires pour qu'elles puissent couvrir toutes les zones où le taux de scolarisation est encore faible. Donc, c'est dans ce sens-là que le gouvernement guinéen est en train de mettre tout en œuvre en essayant d'approvisionner suffisamment les lignes budgétaires permettant d'élargir les cantines scolaires à tous les enfants du pays qui vivent sous le seuil de la pauvreté. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. Again, using local producers to feed the children. Finally, from this panel, before I go to the floor, Kenya, basically, how do you ensure sustainability of school feeding programs beyond the donor funding?
Thank you so much. My name is Barongo Stephen, the Director in charge of Primary Education, Ministry of Education, Kenya. I will start from the objectives of the school meals program, which are twofold, with focus on both basic education and also on agriculture or climate-related goals. First and foremost, it is perceived as a safety net, creating equity and access to education, and significantly boosting school attendance rates, especially among vulnerable children from the food insecure houses. The program has also increased enrollment, improved concentration, enhanced gender parity, raised transition rates, and contributed to the overall health and nutrition status of children in environmentally friendly manner. Secondly, the school meals program strives to promote local agriculture production by increasing smallholder farmers' access to schools as markets, empower youth and the smallholders communities with green jobs and skills, and they push direct purchase, conforming to our bottom-up economic transformation agenda in Kenya, which you will come to know later. The school meals is a national program currently operationalized in 26 arid and semi-arid counties using two modalities. The first one is in kind modality for the 11 arid counties. These are counties that cannot grow food, where markets are too far, and if they were to grow, the food would be too expensive. Therefore, this modality calls for centralized procurement, where we procure food and transport to the sub-county directors' stores. From there, we have secondary transportation from the sub-county directors' stores to the school stores for use. Additionally, the mechanism to develop the second one is cash transfer, where the selected schools in the semi-arid areas where food can be grown are given cash. The cash is wired to the school, and then the school buys the food from the community. Therefore, the community is encouraged to grow food, therefore also building on their economy, and then they supply to the school. There's a third mechanism that is coming up, that is centralized kitchens, which is underway. And it is happening in the urban informal settlements. The schools that are there, we have a central kitchen where food is cooked. We cook it centrally so that we look at the nutrition, the cleanliness, and the safety of that food. And then once the food is made, then it is transported to schools around there for their lunch. We are targeting all primary schools in the arid counties, selected schools in semi-arid areas, special needs schools, all of them, informal urban settlements, all the schools that are there, and then the refugee camp-based schools, where we are saying that our children in the refugee camps must be taken care of in terms of food. Now, I want to talk about sustainability and climate related, the SMART school meals program, and I will go very fast. Climate Smart Homegrown School Meals program focuses on providing nutritious meals to school children while also considering the environmental sustainability and resilience to climate change. One thing that we do is the local sourcing of food. We emphasize the sourcing of food locally, which reduces transportation emissions and supports local farmers. This reduces the carbon footprint associated with food procurement. The second one is diverse and resilient crops. We encourage the cultivation of diverse and climate resilient crops that can withstand changing weather patterns. This not only ensures a stable food supply, but also helps farmers to adapt to climate change. The third one is sustainable farming practices. Promote sustainable and eco-friendly farming practices such as organic farming, crop rotation, and reduced chemical use pesticide. These practices reduce the environmental impact on agriculture. And then we are also advocating for harvesting of water, rainwater, so that it can be used. The fourth one and almost last is the use of energy efficient cooking system, where we are using energy efficient cooking methods to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. Solar cookers, improved cookstoves, and other energy efficient technologies which we use to help. And then there's the issue of waste reduction, where we implement it by such practices like composting food waste and promoting recycling, reducing food waste, which is economical and so on. Then we have the nutritional education, where the community, the people who make food are educated on how to make this food so nutritious to the benefit of the children. Then we also teach them about the food reservation methods. I think I want to stop there and say we are doing well and we are hoping to do better. Thank you.
I feel guilty pushing you to finish because it's a very impressive school feeding program and it's being scaled up in a climate sensitive manner. There are lessons there. Let me call upon two colleagues from the floor, Sam from UNICEF and then Colleen from WFP to make an intervention. Sam. As Sam is beginning to speak, I'll do one final question that any one of you country partners can respond to, which is, what is your source of fuel for cooking, preparing these school meals? Sam.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you, honorable ministers. It's really interesting and inspiring to learn all the efforts and success stories from all these countries. I would like to thank you for this opportunity to address this critical issue. My name is Samson. I'm the Nutrition Program Manager and the Early Childhood Development Coordinator for UNICEF Rwanda. Today, I'm here with you representing the Child Nutrition and Development Program of UNICEF headquarters, the division of school-age and adolescent girls nutrition. Obviously, as had been mentioned by many of honorable speakers before me, early nutrition intervention is foundational to child's physical as well as cognitive development, which directly impact the learning capacity, and especially it's too critical, the first 1,000 days investment, because it will determine the next 7,000 days investment return. And investing in nutrition in a comprehensive manner within a school setup had proven to be impactful not only in learning outcomes, but as well as longer term health and nutrition outcomes. And each $1 investment in that sector have a return of $23 as it had been published recently. And the problem of malnutrition, especially among school-age children, is widespread, and we don't expect to transform our continent with that level of issues without comprehensively addressing it within a school nutrition and health programming, as it will disastrously impact the human capital development, which is the future of transformed continent. So to mention some of the statistics, some studies from 79 countries, including most of our continent, indicates that 10% increase in stunting corresponds to 8% drop in proportion of children completing primary school, which is also affecting their productivity and lifetime earning. And as you know, most of our countries in our continent are suffering with high level of stunting. And I appreciate that one of you had mentioned it also earlier. Similarly, there is hidden hunger, micronutrient deficiency. That's why we say, or we promote, we need to go beyond the school meal to ensure that the school meal is nutritious enough, full of appropriate nutrients. Otherwise, there is a hidden hunger that we don't see. And if we took one of them, the iodine deficiency, which is currently affecting about 60 million school-age children globally, it is associated with 13.5 point reduction in IQ. So that's why really accessing or addressing the school feeding program in a comprehensive manner, including the nutrition, the health, the wash, and other multi-sectoral efforts, as some of you mentioned, is critical and important. So we recommend investing in health, nutrition, and well-being of learners is key in achieving inclusive and equitable quality education and leading to lifelong outcome in terms of health, especially addressing NCDs. Innovative approach to financing and coordination. I think we have learned from the Kenya innovations and other innovations. We need to really strengthen those. And finally, I would like to say that UNICEF promotes a comprehensive package of a school food and nutrition program to prevent all forms of malnutrition among school-age children, which includes healthy and nutritious school meals, healthy school food environment, free from unhealthy foods and beverages high in sugar, salt, and fat, educate water and sanitation facilities, micronutrient supplementation and deworming programs, as well as skill-based nutrition education and physical activity. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Sam. I'm sorry we are so tight on time because this is very, very important discussion. A staggering statistic that you threw out there, Sam, 10% increase in stunting leads to 8% decline in cognitive achievement. That is staggering because here we are trying to improve learning outcomes, but if there is fundamental constraint through stunting, then our efforts become limited. Thank you, Sam. Finally, Colleen, WFP.
So much. Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you very much, honorable ministers, for your contribution. I will try not to echo my colleague from UNICEF too much. My name is Colleen O'Connor. I work for WFP here in Rwanda, head of our resilience, social protection, and school feeding programs. So I would just like to complement what Sam had said from UNICEF and say that WFP also encourages broadening the scope of school feeding programs to also focus on ECDs and pre-primary students as well. So really having that maximum nutritional impact for the 3 to 5 year olds. On the other hand, our colleague from the World Bank, Dr. Mustafa, spoke earlier about the first 1,000 days, but I think we all know about the global shift to the first 8,000 days, focusing on how important those are as well. So really encouraging the nutritional impact to hit also the school-age children and the adolescents who suffer from a lot of that hidden hunger, micronutrient deficiencies that Sam was speaking of. So school meals are obviously an excellent vehicle to support that. As WFP, we obviously are doing a lot of support for some of the countries here and transitioning much more to an enabler role, supporting governments to achieve their goals. So was very happy to hear the Honorable Minister from Zimbabwe highlight the School Meals Coalition, of which WFP hosts the Secretariat. So it's an excellent resource for governments seeking support in national school feeding programs. The moderator mentioned there's over 100 countries who have joined, and I believe 46 member states are from the African continent. So there's the Sustainable Financing Initiative that can help to develop financing strategies. It actually supported the government of Rwanda, Ministry of Education, and Ministry of Finance to develop a school feeding financing strategy that was actually validated just last week by the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Finance, and the Prime Minister's Office. So that's available online if anyone would like to reference that. The Research Consortium for School Health and Nutrition is another excellent initiative on how to improve the nutritional quality of meals. And the Data and Monitoring Initiative also, I think, can provide a lot of support in overcoming some of those challenges that a lot of our programs often face. So I just want to close by saying that we at WFP recognize also the multi-sectoral impacts and benefits of school feeding programs. I really appreciated the input on acknowledging the agriculture, social protection, and health and nutrition sectors. And we remain available to partner and support governments to strengthen their national programs in any way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Corinne. WFP has been absolutely pivotal to the expansion of school feeding. I want to close now with just asking, how do you cook? What do you use to cook? This has implications as we expand school feeding programs in terms of climate change and sustainability. I'll just quickly go through, let's start with Kenya. What do you use to cook? Just one sentence.
I think I'd alluded to that
Yes.
in my talk. And I said we are encouraging that we use energy saving GCOs. We encourage that we don't use fuel that will emit some gases that will, we are using energy saving GCOs in Kenya. And we are encouraging that in the schools procure this so that as they cook, they save their energy, and then they also cap on emissions of dangerous gases to the environment.
Thank you very much. Dr. Yusuf.
Okay. You ask about what do we cook?
Yes, what do you use to cook?
In fact, we do have a kind of program which is being expanded, like gas production. And since in rural area, this program has not been extended yet, with people, they use this wood to cook, actually, to be honest.
Fine, that's fine. Gabia?
Namibia, you want us?
No, Gabia.
No, it's Cameroon.
Sorry, forgive me. Cameroon. Cameroon.
Yeah, for the Gambia, like with the case of Guinea, we are using firewood. That's also one of the challenges that we are having. But then also, in some cases, we use charcoal also. But we are trying to see how to transition from these challenges.
Nous utilisons les foyers améliorés et nous utilisons aussi du bois parce que nous sommes seulement dans 4 régions du Cameroun. Nous n'avons pas encore mis le PAM dans tout le pays dans ces 4 régions expérimentales.
Thank you. Namibia.
The majority of schools use firewood, unfortunately. Very few electricity and occasional ones solar energy.
Urban schools resort to electricity. Rural schools use firewood.
Okay, I brought that up deliberately because even as we scale up school meals, we need to think about the implications on the environment. And imagine the number of trees you would cut if you are like Brazil serving 31 million meals a day. So we just need to think of how to use clean cooking methodologies. This is very
Add also the fact that in some cases, in some schools, we're trying to see how to introduce gradually some ovens also. But majority of schools are using firewoods.
It's just something to take into account as we scale up these programs. This has been very helpful, very useful. I wish we had more time, but we need to let you go so that we can now transition to the group discussions if there's still time. But thank you very, very much. I leave this podium convinced that school feeding has taken off and that there are some really innovative activities that are taking place in every country, and that through the School Meals Coalition, we can continue to learn from each other. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
We have one last section, which is essentially a discussion. We have 3 round tables. The first one is going to be focusing on exploring the direct correlation between school meals programs and improved learning outcomes. That's Caroline over there. She's raising a hand. And then the second session, it's what strategies can ensure sustainability and continuity of school feeding programs, especially during financial constraints. That's the third group with Naila over here. And then we have the last group, which is how do hygiene and health programs directly impact student learning, academic success, and reduce absenteeism. So we want to have roughly about 15 minutes where we can discuss these questions. And then from there, we can then have a summary of the outcomes based on what the minister has presented, as well as what we are going to gather from our groups. And if the ministers are available, please feel free to join some of the groups so that we can also get your insights from that. So starting from now, about 15 minutes. Thank you.
Sure.